I'm Mackenzie Patterson, 28 years old, and today I'm watching my hometown through the tinted windows of a black limousine. Exactly 10 years ago, I stood at the bus stop in my graduation gown diploma. In one hand, a crumpled $10 bill, in the other, tears streaming down my face as my parents' car disappeared around the corner. They left me with nothing but a decade of silence. I never thought I'd come back here. Now I'm back not for revenge, but to show them exactly who I've become. Before I dive into my story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. If my journey resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over adversity. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. May 15th was supposed to be the proudest day of my life. I'd worked relentlessly through high school maintaining a perfect GPA while juggling part-time jobs to help my family. Being named valedictorian felt like validation for all those late nights studying while my friends were out having fun. That morning, I practiced my speech in front of the bathroom mirror, my hands shaking with excitement. My graduation gown hung on my closet door, the honor cords draped carefully over the hanger. When I went downstairs for breakfast, Mom and Dad seemed unusually quiet, but I attributed it to the emotional nature of the day. "You nervous about your speech?" Kenzie Dad asked, not looking up from his newspaper. "A little," I admitted, but mostly excited. Mom poured me a glass of orange juice. "You'll do fine," she said, her voice oddly detached. Looking back, I should have recognized the signs. The way they avoided eye contact, their brief responses, the tension in their shoulders. The ceremony went perfectly. Under the bright June sun, I delivered my speech about gratitude, opportunity, and the importance of family support. From the podium, I could see my parents in the audience. Dad in his only suit, Mom wearing the blue dress she saved for special occasions. When I mentioned how my parents' sacrifices made my success possible, Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I thought it was pride. It wasn't. After the ceremony, they hugged me stiffly and took the obligatory photos. Dad suggested we go out for dinner, something we rarely did due to our tight finances. We went to Denny's, the fanciest restaurant our small town offered. Throughout the meal, they barely spoke. I filled the silence with excited chatter about college plans, my scholarship to State University, and the summer ahead. About college, Dad finally interrupted, clearing his throat. "There's been a change of plans." I remember the ice in my stomach when he said that. The way Mom suddenly became very interested in stirring her coffee. "What change?" I asked. Dad paid the bill, and we got back into our old Buick. Instead of turning toward home, he headed for the bus station on the edge of town. "Dad, where are we going?" He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Your mother and I have decided it's time for us to start a new chapter." "What do you mean?" "We've sold the house," Mom said quietly. "We're moving to Florida next week." The world tilted sideways. "Florida, but what about me? What about my stuff?" "We've packed your essential items," Mom said, not meeting my eyes. "They're in the trunk." When we pulled up to the bus station, Dad turned off the engine. The silence was deafening. "Listen, Mackenzie," he said, his voice firm. "We've done our part. Fed you, clothed you, got you through high school. You're 18 now, an adult. It's time you make your own way." I thought it was a joke. It had to be. But then Dad reached into his wallet and pulled out a $10 bill. "This should get you started," he said, holding it out. When I didn't take it, he placed it on the dashboard. "Your mother and I sacrificed everything for you. Now it's our time. We don't want you following us to Florida. You need to build your own life." "But I have a scholarship," I whispered, tears forming. "I need a place to stay during breaks. I need—" "You're smart," Mom interrupted. "You'll figure it out." Dad popped the trunk and set my hastily packed suitcase and a garbage bag full of clothes on the curb. I was still wearing my graduation gown when they drove away, leaving me standing at the bus stop with $10, a diploma, and the devastating knowledge that my parents had planned this abandonment for months. I watched their car until it disappeared around the corner, certain they would turn around, laugh, and tell me it was all a terrible joke. They never did. That first night was the longest of my life. As darkness fell over the bus station, reality sank in. I was homeless. The station closed at midnight, forcing me out into the unfamiliar night. I sat on my suitcase outside Diploma, clutched to my chest, jumping at every shadow and sound. With shaking hands, I called Jessica Thompson, my best friend since 6th grade. Kenzie. Her voice was groggy with sleep. It's 1 a.m. What's wrong? When I explained through sobs what had happened, she didn't believe me at first. Nobody would. What kind of parents abandon their child on graduation day? Stay there, she finally said. I'm coming to get you. Jessica's parents were shocked, but welcomed me to stay until we figure things out. I slept on their couch that night, numb with disbelief. The next morning, Mrs. Thompson tried calling my parents, but they had already disconnected their phone. They really did leave, she said, hanging up the receiver with a troubled expression. Kenzie, honey, you can stay here while you sort things out. I was grateful, but I could sense their unspoken questions. How long would I need to stay? What was the plan? They had their own financial struggles, and another mouth to feed wasn't in their budget. Finding a job proved nearly impossible with just a high school diploma. I applied everywhere. Retail stores, fast food restaurants, gas stations. Most never called back. Some interviewed me, but chose applicants with experience. After 2 weeks of rejections, Jessica mentioned that the Bluebird Diner, where her cousin worked, needed a new waitress. The manager, a stern woman named Rita, hired me on the spot more from desperation than impression. Shift starts at 6 a.m., she said. Don't be late. The work was grueling. Long hours on my feet, demanding customers meager tips. I earned just enough to contribute to groceries at the Thompsons, but not enough to afford my own place. Each night, I folded the couch blankets neatly, trying to minimize my presence in their home. As weeks turned to months, tension grew. Jessica and I had planned to be roommates at State University in the fall, but now my future was uncertain. My scholarship required full-time enrollment, but how could I attend classes while working to support myself? The university's housing didn't cover summer breaks, so even with financial aid, I'd be homeless again during vacations. Jessica's boyfriend Bradley started coming over more often, clearly annoyed by my constant presence. I'd catch their whispered arguments, Bradley asking how long is she staying exactly. 2 months after graduation, Jessica sat beside me on the couch after her parents had gone to bed. Kenzie, she started not meeting my eyes. You know I love you like a sister. My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming, but I prompted. But Bradley and I were hoping to have more privacy this summer before college, and Mom and Dad are starting to ask questions about the long-term plan. She rushed her words. They suggested maybe you could find another arrangement by the end of the month. It was the first betrayal after my parents, not as severe, but painful nonetheless. My best friend choosing her boyfriend's comfort over my desperate situation. I couldn't blame her, not really, but it hurt all the same. I understand, I said quietly, though I didn't. Not completely. Through a coworker at the diner, I found a room in a cramped apartment shared with 3 other people. A community college student, a retail worker, and a night shift security guard. The place was dingy with water stains on the ceiling and the perpetual smell of old cooking oil, but it was a roof over my head. I worked double shifts at the diner, often 16 hours straight. My feet swelled in my cheap shoes. My hands cracked from harsh cleaning chemicals. I fell into bed exhausted each night, only to wake up and do it all again. Jessica left for college at the end of August. We promised to stay in touch, but both knew our friendship had fundamentally changed. As I watched her parents help load her car with dorm supplies they'd bought, the contrast with my own situation was painful. She had a path forward. I was just trying to survive. Fall arrived, and with it came the knowledge that I should have been starting college. Instead, I was refilling coffee cups and calculating tips to see if I could afford both electricity and laundry that week. My dream of higher education seemed to be slipping away with each passing day. Life has a strange way of bringing people into your path exactly when you need them most. For me, that person was Diane Miller. Diane started coming to the Bluebird Diner every Tuesday and Thursday around 10 a.m. after the breakfast rush, but before the lunch crowd. She always ordered the same thing: black coffee, a Western omelet, and wheat toast, no butter. She tipped generously and, unlike most customers, actually looked at me when she spoke. One particularly rough morning in October, I spilled coffee on my order pad while serving Diane. Exhausted from picking up a night shift for a sick coworker, I fought back tears of frustration. I'm so sorry, I stammered, trying to salvage the soggy pad. It's just coffee, Diane said, handing me a stack of napkins. Rough day. Something about her kind eyes broke through my carefully maintained composure. Before I knew it, I was telling her about working double shifts, how my apartment's heating had broken down, and how I was struggling to save enough to take even one community college class next semester. You were valedictorian, Diane asked, seeming genuinely surprised. What happened to college plans? I hesitated, then shared the abbreviated version of my parents' abandonment. I expected pity, but Diane's expression showed something else. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Sit down for a minute, she said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. With the diner nearly empty, I took a quick break. I own Miller Real Estate Group, she explained, sliding a business card across the table. My assistant just gave notice yesterday. The job pays better than waiting tables, and I could use someone with a good head on their shoulders. I stared at the card, suspicious of this sudden opportunity. I don't have any experience in real estate. Can you answer phones, schedule appointments, and learn basic office software? Yes, but that's all I need to start. The rest I can teach you. She sipped her coffee. Think about it. Call me if you're interested. That night, I researched Diane Miller and her company. Miller Real Estate Group was legitimate. One of the most successful agencies in the county, specializing in residential properties. After a sleepless night weighing my options, I called the number on her card. 2 weeks later, I started as Diane's administrative assistant. The office was in a renovated Victorian house downtown, with large windows and actual heating that worked. My desk had a new computer, and for the first time since graduation, I felt a glimmer of hope. Diane was demanding but fair. She expected excellence but took the time to teach me the business. I absorbed everything. Filing systems, property listings, client relations, marketing strategies. When I made mistakes, she corrected them without belittling me. You have potential, Mackenzie, she told me one evening as we worked late preparing for an open house. But potential needs direction and opportunity to become success. With a steady paycheck, I moved into a small studio apartment. It wasn't much, but it was clean, safe, and mine alone. I bought a proper bed, a desk from a thrift store, and started taking online business classes at night. When Diane discovered my studies, she adjusted my schedule to accommodate exams and important assignments. Education is never wasted in real estate, she said. Our clients trust us with their biggest investments. They deserve knowledgeable agents. Slowly, Diane became more than a boss. She was the mentor I never had, offering guidance on everything from professional attire to investment strategies. She invited me to her home for Thanksgiving, introducing me to her husband Carl and their adult children with casual warmth. Family isn't always blood, she told me privately, refilling my wine glass. Sometimes it's who shows up for you when blood doesn't. 6 months after starting at Miller Real Estate, I received an email from my mother. Seeing her name in my inbox sent a physical shock through my body. Mackenzie, the message read, Your father and I have hit some difficult times in Florida. The cost of living is higher than we expected, and Dad's job fell through. We could use some financial help if you're in a position to assist family. Mom. No apology. No questions about how I'd survived. Just a request for money as if they hadn't abandoned me with $10 to my name. Diane found me crying in the break room, the email still open on my phone. They have the audacity to ask me for money, I whispered, handing her the phone. After what they did. She read the email, her expression hardening. You don't owe them anything, Mackenzie. Not a response, not money, not forgiveness. That night, I drafted and deleted a dozen replies before sending a simple message, I'm not in a position to help. Please don't contact me again. It was my first act of self-protection, establishing a boundary that felt both terrifying and empowering. When I told Diane what I'd done, she nodded approvingly. You're stronger than you know, she said. And you're going to be okay. For the first time since graduation day, I believed it might be true. 2 years after joining Miller Real Estate, I had worked my way up to assistant manager. At 20, I was the youngest person in the office to hold the position, but I had earned it through dedication and results. I handled client intake, coordinated office operations, and had even helped close a few smaller sales under Diane's guidance. My life had achieved a stability I once thought impossible. I had a dependable income, was steadily advancing in my online business degree, and had built a small but comfortable life for myself. The wounds of my parents' abandonment hadn't healed completely, but they had scabbed over, allowing me to function without constant pain. It was during this period of relative calm that I received an unexpected message on Facebook from my cousin, Rachel. Growing up, Rachel and I had been close despite living in different towns. 3 years older than me, she had been more like a big sister, teaching me how to apply makeup and giving advice about boys. After my parents left, I had lost touch with all extended family, assuming they had either sided with my parents or simply didn't care enough to reach out. Kenzie, I just found out what Aunt Karen and Uncle Richard did. Rachel's message read. I've been trying to find you for months. Nobody would tell me what happened to you. Are you okay? Can we talk? Part of me wanted to ignore the message to protect the fragile peace I had built, but another part longed for connection to my past, to someone who knew me before the abandonment. After several days of deliberation, I responded and we arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. Seeing Rachel felt like looking into an alternate universe where my family history still existed. She had the same Patterson nose and dark eyebrows as my father. When she hugged me, I caught the faint scent of the vanilla perfume she had worn since high school. I can't believe what they did to you, she said, shaking her head in disgust. Mom finally told me last month. I was horrified. Why didn't anyone reach out? I asked the question that had haunted me for 2 years. Rachel looked down at her coffee. They told everyone you had chosen to cut ties with a family, that you wanted a fresh start without us. I should have known it was a lie. I'm so sorry, Kenzie. That afternoon stretched into evening as we reconnected. Rachel shared updates on the extended family and listened sympathetically to my story of survival. She seemed genuinely impressed by my position at Miller Real Estate. You've done amazing, she said, squeezing my hand. I always knew you would. Over the following weeks, Rachel and I rebuilt our relationship through texts, calls, and occasional visits. She became my link to the past I had lost, filling in gaps about family history and sharing memories I had begun to forget. Having family again, even just one cousin, felt like recovering a piece of my identity. 3 months after our reunion, Rachel called me in tears. I need your help, Kenzie, she sobbed. Dad's business is failing and we're about to lose everything. The bank is foreclosing on the house next month. I'm so sorry, I said, genuinely concerned. Uncle Dave had always been kind to me as a child. What can I do? I have a business opportunity, she explained, her voice steadying. A friend of mine runs a small investment group. They flip houses, and they're looking for new investors. The returns are amazing. At least 30% in 6 months. That sounds too good to be true, I said cautiously, remembering Diane's warnings about investment schemes. It's legitimate, I promise. My friend Jason has been doing this for years. I've already put in what I can, but it's not enough. If you could invest, we could split the returns. It would save my parents' house and help you too. I hesitated. How much are you talking about? $15,000 would be ideal, Rachel said. I know it's a lot, but think of it as helping family while making a smart investment. $15,000 represented most of my savings. Money I had carefully set aside for emergencies, and eventually a down payment on my own home. But the thought of helping family, of being the person who stepped up when others were in need, appealed to something deep inside me. Perhaps I wanted to prove I was better than my parents, that I wouldn't abandon family in crisis. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet with Rachel's friend Jason. He presented impressive-looking documents showing previous projects and returns. Everything seemed legitimate, and Rachel's obvious relief when I agreed to invest made me feel like I had made the right decision. I transferred $15,000 to the account Jason provided, receiving formal-looking investment documents in return. For the first few weeks, Rachel sent regular updates about the project, a house they were renovating in an up-and-coming neighborhood. She even sent photos of the property and renovation progress. Then the updates became less frequent. Rachel stopped answering my calls as promptly. When we did speak, she seemed rushed and vague about the investment details. 6 weeks after making the investment, I received a call from my Aunt Linda, Rachel's mother. Mackenzie, have you heard from Rachel? She asked, her voice tight with worry. Not for a few days, I answered, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. Why? She's gone, Aunt Linda said. left a note saying she needs to figure things out, and disappeared. We haven't been able to reach her for 3 days. My mouth went dry. What about the house flipping business? And her friend Jason? A pause. What house flipping business, Rachel, doesn't have a friend named Jason? The truth crashed down like a collapsing building. There was no investment, no Jason, no house being renovated. Rachel had taken my money and disappeared. When I finally got through to Rachel's boyfriend, he confirmed my worst fears. Rachel had a gambling addiction she had hidden from the family. She had accumulated massive debts and had been growing increasingly desperate. I had been betrayed again, this time by the only family member I had allowed myself to trust. The $15,000, earned through countless early mornings and late nights, carefully saved dollar by dollar, was gone. When I told Diane what had happened, she didn't lecture or say I told you so. Instead, she poured 2 glasses of whiskey in her office after hours. I lost $30,000 to my brother when I was about your age, she said, swirling the amber liquid. He was addicted to cocaine and convinced me he needed the money for medical treatments. I looked up in surprise. Diane had never shared much about her personal history. Family has a unique power to blind us, she continued. We want so badly to believe in them that we ignore the warning signs. How did you get past it? I asked. I accepted that I couldn't change him or get my money back. But I could change how I moved forward. She raised her glass. Here's to expensive lessons and moving forward. We clinked glasses, and I felt the strange comfort of shared experience. The betrayal hurt deeply, but it hadn't destroyed me. Like the abandonment before it, this wound would eventually scar over becoming part of my story, but not its conclusion. The loss of my savings to Rachel's deception could have broken me. Instead, it ignited something I hadn't known existed within me. A fierce determination not just to survive, but to thrive despite the betrayals. I want to get my real estate license, I told Diane one morning, 3 weeks after discovering Rachel's deception. I'm tired of being vulnerable. I need to build something that can't be taken away. Diane studied me over her reading glasses. The courses are rigorous. You'll need to balance them with your current job and online classes. I can do it, I insisted. I'll make it work. And I did. For the next 6 months, my life became a carefully orchestrated schedule of work, studying, and minimal sleep. I woke at 4 a.m. to study real estate regulations before work, used my lunch breaks to review property law, and attended evening classes 3 nights a week. Weekends disappeared into a blur of practice exams and flashcards. On the day of the licensing exam, Diane surprised me by showing up at the testing center. Whatever happens, she said, handing me a new pen with a Miller Real Estate logo, I'm proud of you for trying. 6 hours later, I emerged exhausted but triumphant. I had passed on my first attempt, scoring in the top percentile. When I called Diane with the news, she wasn't surprised. I've already had business cards made, she admitted. They're waiting on your desk. My transition from assistant manager to licensed real estate agent came with a steep learning curve. The first month, I shadowed Diane and other senior agents, absorbing their techniques for client interactions and property showings. By the second month, I was handling my own listings. Mostly modest homes and condos that the more experienced agents weren't interested in. My first independent sale was a small 2-bedroom house that had languished on the market for months. The owners were an elderly couple moving to assisted living, desperate to sell so they could afford the facility's deposit. After 3 open houses with no offers, they were losing hope. The problem isn't the house, I told them after my first walkthrough. It's how it's being presented. I spent a weekend helping them declutter, rearranging furniture to maximize space, and creating an inviting atmosphere with borrowed plants and fresh paint. Instead of the standard listing photos, I hired a photography student from the local community college to take warm, lifestyle-oriented images that told a story about the home. When we relisted with my marketing approach, we received 3 offers in the first week, ultimately selling for above asking price. The couple's tearful gratitude affected me deeply. This wasn't just about commission. I had genuinely helped them transition to the next stage of their lives. Word spread about the young agent who had sold the unsellable house. Soon I was getting referrals and requests from clients who specifically wanted to work with me. My approach differed from traditional agents. I focused on understanding clients' emotional needs regarding their homes, not just their financial and practical requirements. Diane noticed my growing success. "You've found your niche," she observed as I signed another listing. "You connect with clients differently than most agents." By my 23rd birthday, I was regularly closing deals that surprised even the veteran agents. My commission checks grew, allowing me to rebuild my savings far beyond what I had lost to Rachel. I developed a reputation for successfully marketing properties that other agents had given up on, turning them into desirable homes through creative staging and marketing. I began working 70-hour weeks, not out of necessity, but driven by an internal fire. Each successful closing felt like another step away from that abandoned girl at the bus stop. Each commission check represented not just money, but independence and security. Diane recognized my dedication and results, promoting me to full agent status with an increased commission structure. With my new financial stability, I completed my online business degree and began taking additional courses in real estate investment and property management. My client list expanded to include several wealthy investors who appreciated my attention to detail and honest assessments. One client, an executive who had recently relocated to the area, referred me to her colleagues, opening doors to the luxury market I hadn't expected to access for years. I developed an innovative approach for marketing exclusive properties, creating lifestyle videos that showcased not just the homes, but the surrounding communities and amenities. These videos, shared across social media platforms, attracted attention from out-of-state buyers looking to relocate. As my professional life flourished, I began cautiously rebuilding a personal life as well. I made friends among my peers in the real estate community, joined a book club, and even went on occasional dates, though I remained guarded about my past. The abandonment and subsequent betrayals had left me wary of deep attachments, but I was slowly learning to trust again. Carefully, selectively. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, my carefully constructed world tilted when I received an unexpected call from a Florida number I didn't recognize. Mackenzie. The voice was familiar despite the years. My father. My hand tightened around the phone. "How did you get this number?" "It wasn't easy," he admitted. "I've been trying to find you for months. We need to talk, Kenzie. Things have changed. I've changed." "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "To see you. To explain. To try to make things right." He paused. "Can we meet?" The question hung in the air, loaded with 23 years of history, the last 5 marked by absence. The old Mackenzie would have hung up or lashed out. The new Mackenzie, the professional I had worked so hard to become, remained composed. "I'll think about it," I said finally, neither agreeing nor refusing. "I need to go now." After hanging up, I sat at my desk staring at the phone. Part of me wanted to call Diane for advice, but another part, the stronger part, knew this was a decision I needed to make for myself. For the first time since being abandoned, I felt completely in control when it came to my parents. I would decide whether to meet my father. I would set the terms. And whatever happened next would be my choice, not something forced upon me by circumstances or the actions of others. As I returned to my listing paperwork, I realized I was no longer defined by what had been done to me, but by what I had built from the ashes. Like a phoenix rising, I had transformed pain into power and abandonment into independence. After a week of consideration, I agreed to meet my father. Not at his suggestion of my home or office, but at a neutral restaurant in a neighboring city. I chose a upscale steakhouse where I had previously closed a major property deal. Familiar territory that gave me a psychological advantage. I arrived early, dressed in my most professional attire, a charcoal suit that cost more than my parents had likely spent on my entire high school wardrobe. The hostess led me to a corner table with good sightlines to the entrance. I ordered sparkling water and waited, rehearsing responses to whatever explanations or excuses might come. When my father walked in, the sight of him was jarring. The imposing figure from my childhood had diminished. His hair had gone completely gray, his posture slightly stooped. He scanned the restaurant nervously, and when our eyes met, his face registered shock, perhaps at seeing me looking successful and confident, rather than the desperate girl he'd expected. "Mackenzie," he said, approaching the table, He moved to hug me, but I extended my hand instead. The handshake was brief, formal, a business greeting rather than a familial one. "It's good to see you," he said, taking the seat across from me. You look amazing." "Thank you," I replied evenly. "You wanted to talk. I'm listening." He fidgeted with his napkin. "I don't know where to begin. The last 5 years, things haven't gone as planned for your mother and me. 5 years and 7 months, I corrected automatically. Since graduation day." He winced. "Yes. You're right, of course." The waiter arrived to take our orders. I requested a filet mignon rare. My father hesitated over the menu before selecting the cheapest entree, confirming my suspicion about his financial situation. "I made mistakes, Kenzie," he continued after the waiter left. "Terrible mistakes, leaving you that way. It's unforgivable, I know that." "Yet you're here asking for forgiveness," I observed. "I'm asking for a chance," he said. "A chance to explain, to make amends somehow." "What changed?" I asked. "You had years to reach out. Why now?" He aged before my eyes, his face sagging with what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Your mother is sick. Cancer. The treatments. They're expensive. Insurance only covers so much." The truth emerged piece by predictable piece. My parents' Florida dream had quickly soured. The real estate investment they'd poured their savings into had collapsed during a market downturn. My father had bounced between increasingly lower-paying jobs. My mother's diagnosis had depleted what little they had left. "We're about to lose everything," he admitted. "The house, the car, everything." I took a slow sip of water. "And you thought of me." "It's not just about money," he insisted, though his eyes betrayed him. "Your mother wants to see you. To explain her side of things before." He trailed off. "Before she dies," I finished for him. He nodded, eyes downcast. "How much do you need?" I asked directly. My directness seemed to startle him. "The treatments cost about $30,000 that insurance won't cover." "But Kenzie, I didn't come just for—" "Let's be honest with each other," I interrupted. "You researched me before calling, didn't you? You know I'm successful now." His hesitation confirmed my suspicion. "My real estate license is public record," I continued. "My sales are reported in the business section. You knew exactly who you were calling. Someone who could write a check to solve your problems." "That's not fair," he protested, but weakly. "Isn't it? Tell me this. If I were still struggling working minimum wage jobs, would you have reached out? Would reconciliation have seemed so urgent?" When he couldn't meet my eyes, I had my answer. "Your mother regrets what we did," he said finally. "She talks about you all the time. Wonders what you're doing if you're happy." "She has my email address," I pointed out. "She used it once to ask for money, not to apologize or check on my welfare." The waiter returned with our meals. We ate in uncomfortable silence, the expensive food tasteless in my mouth, despite its quality. I watched my father cut his steak into increasingly smaller pieces, avoiding the conversation we needed to have. "I was angry for a long time," I said finally. "Furious, actually. Do you know what happened to me after you drove away?" He shook his head. I told him everything. The night at the bus station, the couch surfing, the diner job, the cramped apartment with strangers. I described the poverty, the loneliness, the abandonment of my college dreams. I spoke without emotion, as if delivering a business report, which somehow made the story more devastating. "Jesus, Kenzie," he whispered when I finished. "I had no idea it would be that bad. We thought you'd go to a friend's house, figure things out. You left me with $10, I reminded him. What exactly did you think would happen?" His face flushed with anger. The first genuine emotion beyond self-pity he'd shown. "You don't understand what we were going through. The debt, the pressure. We were drowning, and you were always so capable, so independent. We thought you'd be fine." "I was 18, I said quietly. "A child you were legally and morally responsible for. And now you're punishing us by withholding help when we need it most," he snapped, the facade of remorse cracking completely. I set down my fork carefully. "Is that what this is about? You think I owe you assistance after what you did?" "We're family," he insisted. "Despite everything. Family," I repeated the word hollow. "Tell me something, Dad." Have you been watching my career? Following my success from afar? His sudden discomfort answered for him. How long have you known I was doing well? A year too. When he didn't answer, I continued. You didn't reach out when you thought I might still be angry enough to reject you. You waited until you needed something badly enough to risk rejection. That's not true, he protested, but his eyes slid away from mine. I signaled for the check. I think we're done here. So that's it, he asked bitterly. You're successful now, so you can just write us off. Your mother is dying, Mackenzie. The waitress placed the check on the table. I slid my credit card into the folder without looking at the total. I'm sorry about Mom's illness. Truly. But I learned something important when you abandoned me. I learned the difference between helping someone and enabling them. I stood smoothing my suit jacket. I built my life from nothing because you gave me no choice. Perhaps it's time you did the same. You're just like your mother, he spat a last desperate attempt to wound me. Cold. Heartless. I smiled sadly. No, Dad. I'm nothing like either of you. That's why I'm walking away without guilt, just as you did 5 years ago. As I left the restaurant, a weight lifted from my shoulders, not because I had denied his request for money, but because I had finally faced my past without being destroyed by it. The confrontation had confirmed what I needed to know. My parents hadn't changed. They had simply found themselves in circumstances where I was useful to them again. Driving back to my city, I called Diane, who had been anxiously waiting to hear how the meeting went. How do you feel? She asked after I recounted the conversation. Surprisingly okay, I answered, realizing it was true. I thought seeing him would reopen old wounds, but instead, it just confirmed I've healed from them. You handled it perfectly, Diane said. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary for people who don't respect them otherwise. That night, I made a small donation to a cancer research foundation in my mother's name. Not enough to help my parents' situation, but enough to acknowledge her suffering without enabling the cycle of exploitation. It was the balance I needed. Compassion without capitulation. The abandoned girl at the bus stop was truly gone. In her place stood a woman who understood her worth and refused to be defined by the actions of those who had failed her. 3 weeks after the meeting with my father, I was reviewing market trends when an idea began to form. The luxury real estate market in our area had been largely neglected by local agencies, including Miller Real Estate. Most high-end properties were handled by firms from larger cities, leaving a potentially lucrative gap in our own market. After compiling data and creating projections, I requested a meeting with Diane to present my proposal. Now 25 with nearly 3 years of successful sales experience, I had earned the right to be heard, but I was still nervous about pitching such a significant strategy shift. The numbers support a dedicated luxury division, I explained, pointing to my carefully prepared slides. We're losing potential commissions to outside agencies when we have the expertise right here. Diane studied the projections with a frown. It's a big investment, Mackenzie. Marketing to that demographic requires a completely different approach. High-end photography, exclusive events, premium advertising placements. I've calculated the initial costs, I countered, turning to my budget page. We could start small, focusing on just a few premier properties to establish our reputation. And if those properties don't sell, Diane challenged. We'd burn resources and damage our credibility in that market. They'll sell, I insisted. I've already identified 3 potential listings that would be perfect to launch with. For over an hour, we debated the proposal. Diane raised valid concerns about risk resource allocation and market timing. I defended my research and vision with increasing confidence. It was our first real professional disagreement, testing the boundaries of our mentor-protege relationship. It's too risky in the current market, Diane finally concluded. Maybe next year, when the economy is more stable. I had anticipated resistance, but not outright rejection. By next year, someone else will have filled this gap. We'll be playing catch-up instead of leading. My decision is final, Mackenzie, Diane said firmly. The company isn't in a position to gamble on an unproven market segment. I left her office disappointed but not defeated. That evening, reviewing my proposal again, I became increasingly convinced of its viability. If Diane wouldn't risk company resources on my idea, perhaps I could prove its value another way. The next morning, I made a decision that would either advance my career significantly or set it back years. I would use my own commission savings to launch a small-scale version of my luxury marketing plan, focusing on just one high-end property as proof of concept. I approached the Blackwell's clients, whose expansive lakeside property had languished on our listings for months. The house was beautiful but overpriced for our standard client base, and our traditional marketing hadn't attracted suitable buyers. I'd like to try a different approach, I told them during our meeting. A marketing strategy specifically designed for luxury properties like yours. Mr. Blackwell leaned forward, interested. What would that involve? Professional architectural photography, a video tour with drone footage, targeted digital marketing to high-net-worth individuals, and an exclusive open house event, I explained. But it would require removing the listing from general circulation for 30 days. Mrs. Blackwell looked skeptical. Miller Real Estate hasn't handled properties in our price range before. Why should we trust this new approach? It was a fair question. Because I'm personally investing in this marketing strategy, I answered honestly. I believe in its potential so strongly that I'm funding it myself rather than asking you or my firm to take the risk. My transparency won them over. They agreed to a 30-day exclusive arrangement, and I immediately began implementing my plan. I hired the best architectural photographer in the region, commissioned a videographer for stunning aerial footage, and designed marketing materials that emphasized lifestyle rather than just property features. The investment depleted most of my savings, nearly $20,000 that I had meticulously accumulated. If this gamble failed, I would be financially vulnerable again, a thought that triggered memories of that bus stop abandonment. But unlike then, this risk was my choice, calculated and deliberate. When Diane discovered what I had done, she was furious. "You're undermining my authority," she said, during a tense meeting in her office. "I told you the company wasn't ready for this direction." "I'm not using company resources," I pointed out. "This is my personal investment in my career." "Using a company listing?" "A listing that wasn't selling through conventional methods," I countered. The Blackwells were considering switching agencies. "At least this way, if it works, Miller Real Estate gets the commission." Our relationship, previously so supportive, grew strained. Diane's disapproval was evident in small ways. Missed lunches, curt emails, fewer mentoring conversations. The distance hurt, but I remained convinced my approach would prove successful. The luxury marketing campaign launched with targeted social media ads, direct outreach to wealthy clients in neighboring cities, and a feature in a regional lifestyle magazine. I created a website specifically for the property, highlighting its unique features and the exclusive lifestyle it offered. 2 weeks in, despite substantial interest online, we had received no offers. The Blackwells grew nervous, calling daily for updates. My colleagues at the office whispered about my foolish gamble. Doubt crept in. Had I overestimated the market? Had my ambition outpaced my judgment? I redoubled my efforts, reaching out to contacts at exclusive clubs and high-end businesses in the region. I sent personalized invitations to the upcoming open house event, which I had designed as an upscale evening gathering with catered food and live music, another expense from my dwindling savings. 3 days before the open house disaster struck, the catering company canceled due to a family emergency. The replacement I found charged double the original price. Then, the weather forecast predicted thunderstorms for the event day, threatening the outdoor portions of the gathering. The night before the open house, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by marketing materials and backup plans, questioning everything. This wasn't just about selling one house. It was about proving my vision, establishing a new direction for my career, and perhaps most importantly, showing Diane that I could succeed independently. The weight of those expectations, combined with the financial risk I had taken, left me sleepless and anxious. The morning of the open house brought clearing skies, the first good omen in weeks. As staff set up for the evening event, I received a call from an unknown number. "Is this Mackenzie Patterson?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, this is she." "My name is Lawrence Winterbourne. My assistant forwarded your materials about the lakeside property. I'm flying in from Chicago today and would like a private showing before your event this evening." 4 hours later, I was walking a distinguished gentleman through the house, answering his knowledgeable questions about construction details and property values. Mr. Winterbourne, CEO of a technology company looking to establish offices in our region, was seeking a residence that would impress visiting executives. The location is perfect, he said, standing on the deck overlooking the lake. And the architectural details are exactly what I've been seeking. By the time the open house began that evening, Mr. Winterbourne had submitted an offer, 15% above the asking price with minimal contingencies. The Blackwells accepted immediately. The success of that sale transformed everything. The commission not only recouped my investment, but provided a substantial profit. More importantly, it validated my vision for targeting the luxury market. When I presented the signed contract to Diane the following Monday, her initial expression of surprise gradually shifted to something approaching respect. You took a significant risk, she acknowledged, but the results are impressive. It wasn't just about proving you wrong, I said carefully. It was about proving myself right, that I could see a market opportunity others had missed. Over the following weeks, 3 more high-end property owners contacted our office specifically requesting the luxury marketing package they had heard about. Diane, ever the pragmatic businesswoman, recognized the opportunity. She called me into her office on a Friday afternoon, a stack of papers on her desk. "I've been reviewing your original proposal," she said without preamble. "In light of recent events, I'm prepared to allocate resources to establish a formal luxury division at Miller Real Estate." She slid a document across the desk. "This outlines the division's structure, marketing budget, and commission splits. You would head the division reporting directly to me." I scanned the document, noting the generous terms and significant resources allocated to the project. "This is more comprehensive than my original proposal, because your proof of concept demonstrated greater potential than your projections suggested," Diane replied. "But I have one condition." "What's that?" "No more unilateral decisions on company listings. We're partners in this, Mackenzie. That means transparent communication even when we disagree." I extended my hand across the desk. "Partners." As we shook hands, I realized how far I had come from that abandoned girl with $10 to her name. Each challenge and setback had built resilience, each success had built confidence. The business gamble had been about more than selling one house. It had been about claiming my place in the world I had worked so hard to enter. The 3 years following the launch of Miller Luxury Properties transformed both the company and my life. From a boutique division with a handful of high-end listings, we expanded into a regional powerhouse handling exclusive properties across 3 neighboring cities. My name became synonymous with luxury real estate in the area, featured in business journals and local magazines. By my 28th birthday, I had achieved what once seemed impossible: equal partnership with Diane in the renamed Miller & Patterson Real Estate Group. Our main office relocated to a renovated historical building downtown with satellite offices in adjacent communities. We employed a team of 20 agents with 5 exclusively dedicated to the luxury division one oversaw. The abandoned girl at the bus stop was now a successful businesswoman whose signature on contracts represented millions of dollars in transactions each year. I had purchased a stylish condominium in the city's most desirable neighborhood, drove a car that turned heads, and had built a reputation for both business acumen and ethical dealings. One quiet Tuesday afternoon, my assistant interrupted a meeting. "There's someone in the lobby asking for you. She says she's an old friend. Jessica Thompson." The name jolted me back to that uncertain summer after graduation. Jessica, my best friend who had initially offered shelter, then asked me to leave when my presence became inconvenient. We hadn't spoken since she left for college 8 years earlier. "I'll be right out," I told my assistant, straightening my suit jacket and gathering my composure. Jessica waited in the reception area, looking both familiar and foreign simultaneously. Her once confident posture seemed diminished, her stylish high school wardrobe replaced by simple, slightly worn clothes. When she saw me, her eyes widened at my transformation. "Kenzie," she said, rising awkwardly, "you look amazing." "Jessica," I replied, keeping my tone professional but not cold. "This is unexpected." We moved to my private office, where she fidgeted nervously with her purse strap before finally explaining her presence. "I moved back to town last month," she said. "Bradley and I divorced 2 years ago. Things have been difficult." As her story unfolded, I felt an odd detachment. Jessica had married Bradley after college, foregone career opportunities to support his ambitions, then found herself abandoned when he left her for a coworker. The parallels to my own abandonment were striking, though I felt no satisfaction in her misfortune. I've been trying to restart my life, she continued, but it's hard finding decent work without recent experience. When I saw your name on a real estate sign, I couldn't believe it was you. What can I do for you, Jessica? I asked, directly sensing there was more to this reunion than nostalgia. She straightened, meeting my eyes. I need a job, Kenzie. Any position. Receptionist, file clerk, anything. I'm a quick learner, and I'll work harder than anyone else. The request surprised me. I studied my former friend, weighing the complex history between us against the clearly desperate present circumstances. The businesswoman in me saw risk in hiring someone from my past. The human in me remembered what desperation felt like. We do have an administrative opening in our client relations department, I said finally. It's entry-level but with room for advancement based on performance. Relief flooded Jessica's face. Really, you do that for me after everything? I'm offering you an opportunity, not a favor, I clarified. You'll be held to the same standards as any other employee. Jessica started the following Monday. Her gratitude manifested as dedication. She arrived early, stayed late, and tackled every task with thoroughness. Her natural social skills, once directed toward high school popularity, now served her well in client interactions. Within months, she had become a valuable team member, earning positive reviews from both colleagues and clients. Our personal relationship gradually thawed as well. Occasional lunch breaks led to after-work conversations, slowly rebuilding a friendship tempered by our shared experiences of abandonment and recovery. I maintained professional boundaries, but allowed myself to appreciate the maturity Jessica had developed through her own hardships. 6 months into her employment, I trusted Jessica enough to involve her in more sensitive aspects of the business. She began handling confidential client information, coordinating with our most valuable customers, and assisting with specialized marketing initiatives. Her insights often proved valuable, particularly regarding client preferences and communication strategies. You've built something incredible here, she told me one evening as we worked late, preparing for an exclusive property launch. I'm still amazed when I think about where you started after graduation. We all have our journeys, I replied, conscious of how differently our paths had unfolded from what we'd imagined as teenagers. 2 weeks later, I received a concerning call from Lawrence Winterbourne, my first luxury client, who had since become a valued repeat customer. He mentioned receiving solicitation from a competing agency, offering insider knowledge of his real estate preferences and investment plans. I found it odd they knew details of our discussions about the lakefront development, he said. Information I'm certain I shared only with your firm. Alarmed, I initiated a discreet investigation, reviewing access logs to our client database and email communications. The digital trail led to a disturbing discovery. Someone had been systematically copying confidential client information and forwarding it to an external email address. The account belonged to Jessica. Further investigation revealed she had been selling our client data to Westfield Properties, our main competitor for luxury listings. The betrayal was calculated and comprehensive. She had extracted not just contact information, but detailed notes on clients' preferences, financial capacities, and future acquisition plans. When confronted in my office with the evidence, Jessica's initial denials quickly crumbled. You don't understand what it's like to struggle anymore, she said bitterly. You've forgotten where you came from. They offered me more money than I'd make in a year here. I gave you a chance when no one else would, I replied, struggling to maintain my composure. I trusted you. And look how well that worked out for you, she sneered, her facade of gratitude completely gone. Always the perfect Mackenzie building your empire while looking down on everyone else. Some of us don't get fairy godmothers like Diane to rescue us. In that moment, I saw clearly what had motivated Jessica's betrayal. Not just financial gain, but deep-seated resentment of my success. The friend who had once offered temporary shelter on her couch couldn't accept that the homeless girl had risen beyond her own station. I could press charges, I said quietly. What you've done constitutes corporate espionage and breach of contract. Fear flickered across Jessica's face. You wouldn't. No, I agreed after a long pause. I won't. Not because you deserve mercy, but because I've learned that moving forward is more valuable than seeking retribution. You're fired effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear your desk. As Jessica was led from the building, I felt an odd sense of closure rather than anger. This betrayal, unlike those before, it hadn't devastated me. I had built systems strong enough to detect the breach before catastrophic damage occurred. I had developed the emotional resilience to respond with measured action rather than reactive emotion. The company recovered quickly. We implemented enhanced security protocols, personally contacted affected clients to address concerns, and ultimately retained our market position despite the attempted sabotage. Jessica's betrayal became merely another challenge overcome, rather than a defining setback. 1 month after Jessica's departure, as I was reviewing quarterly projections, my assistant delivered an envelope that had arrived by certified mail. Inside was a formal notification from a law firm in Florida, informing me that Karen Patterson, my mother, had passed away the previous week following her lengthy battle with cancer. The letter further stated that, contrary to expectations, my mother had specified in her will that I be notified of her memorial service. There was no request for financial assistance, no manipulation, just a simple notification of her passing and the service details. I sat at my desk long after normal business hours staring at the letter. The mother who had participated in my abandonment was gone, taking with her any possibility of explanation or reconciliation. The complicated emotions, anger, grief, confusion, swirled together in a storm I hadn't anticipated. That evening, I called Diane from my condo, seeking the guidance of the woman who had become more of a mother to me than my biological parent had ever been. I think I need to go, I said, after explaining the situation. Not for them, but for me. To close this chapter completely. Do you want me to come with you? Diane offered immediately. The offer touched me deeply. No, but thank you. This is something I need to do alone. As I booked my flight to Florida, I realized that the journey I was about to take represented more than geographical distance. It was the final step in the transformation from abandoned child to fully autonomous adult, facing my past not from a position of weakness or need, but from a position of hard-won strength. I contacted my driver and arranged for something I'd never indulged in before, a limousine to take me from the airport to my hometown. Not out of extravagance, but as a symbolic statement to myself and anyone watching. The abandoned girl was returning on her own terms, having built a life that exceeded even her own expectations. The Florida air hit me like a wall of humid heat as I exited the airport terminal. The black limousine waited exactly where promised, its driver professionally attentive as he loaded my single suitcase into the trunk. I had deliberately packed light. This wasn't a vacation, but a brief, purposeful visit to confront the final ghosts of my past. Patterson Residence, as directed the driver, confirmed, holding the door for me. Yes, I replied, settling into the cool leather interior. But let's drive through downtown first. I'd like to see how things have changed. As the limousine glided through streets, both familiar and strange, I watched my hometown through the tinted windows. The Main Street hardware store where I'd bought school supplies had become a trendy cafe. The movie theater where I'd had my first date was now a fitness center. 10 years had transformed the landscape of my childhood, just as they had transformed me. When we approached my old neighborhood, my pulse quickened. The driver turned onto Maple Avenue, the street where I'd spent 18 years of my life before being abruptly cut loose. The houses looked smaller than in my memory, the trees taller, the sidewalks more cracked. Then we rounded the corner and my childhood home came into view. The once pristine colonial that my mother had maintained with obsessive care now stood neglected, its white paint peeling, the front garden overgrown. A for sale sign tilted in the yard, the word reduced stamped across it in bold red letters. Stop here, please, I instructed the driver. From the safety of the limousine, I studied the house where I had grown up, where I had done homework at the kitchen table, played piano in the front room, and dreamed teenage dreams of future success. The home I had been told I could never return to. Would you like to get out, Miss Patterson? The driver asked. Not yet, I replied. Let's continue to the funeral home. We arrived at Henderson Memorial Chapel 15 minutes before the scheduled service. I instructed the driver to wait, then took a deep breath and stepped out into the bright Florida sunlight, conscious of the impression I created. A poised young woman in a tailored black dress emerging from a sleek limousine, sunglasses, shielding her eyes from both the sun and curious stares. Inside the chapel was modestly filled, perhaps 30 people gathered in small conversational clusters. I recognized a few faces, distant relatives, former neighbors, my mother's bridge club friends. Their conversations halted as I entered, whispers spreading as recognition dawned. My father stood near the closed casket, looking even more diminished than during our restaurant meeting. When he saw me, shock registered on his face, followed quickly by a complex emotion I couldn't quite identify. Relief mixed with something like shame. "You came," he said, as I approached, his voice rough with surprise. "I did," I answered simply. "I didn't think you would. After our last conversation." "I'm not here for you," I clarified. "I'm here for me. And perhaps for her." He nodded, understanding the distinction. "She asked for you near the end. Wanted to know if I'd found you." The information landed like a stone in still water, rippling through my carefully maintained composure. "Did she leave a message for me?" "No specific words," he admitted. "Just regret. A lot of regret." My father's sister, Aunt Helen, approached cautiously. Unlike the rest of the family, she had sent a Christmas card each year after my abandonment, though never with any offer of practical help. "Mackenzie," she said, embracing me stiffly, "you look prosperous." "Thank you for coming," I replied neutrally. "It was a long journey." "Not just in miles," I imagine she said, surprising me with her perception. "Your mother made terrible mistakes. We all did, standing by while it happened." As the service began, I took a seat in the back row, observing rather than participating in the communal mourning. The pastor spoke of Karen Patterson's dedication to her church work, her talent for flower, arranging, her kindness to neighbors. The selective biography of a woman who had abandoned her only child struck me as a strange fiction, though perhaps no stranger than the carefully edited life stories most of us present to the world. After the service, Aunt Helen found me again, this time with determination in her step. "There's something you should know," she said, guiding me to a quiet corner. "About why they left you that day." I tensed, uncertain whether I wanted this information after all these years. "Your father had gambling debts," she continued, her voice low. "Serious ones, to dangerous people. They were fleeing, not just moving. The house had been remortgaged, secretly creditors were closing in. They convinced themselves you'd be safer not involved." "Safer abandoned with $10, I asked incredulously. "I'm not defending it," she replied. "Just explaining. They told themselves you were smart, resourceful, that you'd land on your feet while they sorted out the mess. They didn't expect to be gone so long, but one bad decision led to another. The revelation didn't change what they had done, but it reframed my understanding. My abandonment hadn't been about me at all. Not my worth, not my deserving. It had been about their desperation and poor choices." At the reception following the service, I maintained polite distance from most attendees, accepting condolences with brief acknowledgments. My father approached again, visibly nervous. "Will you stay a few days?" he asked. "I could use help sorting through her things." "No," I answered honestly. "I'm flying back tomorrow. I have a business to run." Disappointment crossed his face. "Of course. Your successful real estate company. I've seen the articles online. You've been following my career." He nodded, looking away. "Your mother printed everything she could find. Kept a scrapbook. She was proud in her way." The information stunned me. The image of my mother secretly tracking my accomplishments, collecting evidence of the life she had chosen not to be part of. Not enough to reach out meaningfully, but enough to watch from afar. "I've made mistakes, Kenzie," my father said, his voice breaking. "Terrible, unforgivable ones. I don't expect you to forget what we did, but is there any chance? Any possibility of starting over?" Now that it's just me, I studied this diminished man, once the towering authority of my childhood, now a lonely widower seeking connection with the daughter he had discarded. Compassion warred with self-preservation within me. "I can't give you what you're looking for," I said finally. "I can't be the daughter you remember or imagine. That girl doesn't exist anymore." His shoulders slumped in resignation. But I continued making a decision I hoped I wouldn't regret. I can offer conditional forgiveness. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying resentment serves no purpose in my life anymore. What does that mean in practice? He asked cautiously. It means I won't cut you off completely. You can email me occasionally. I may respond. But I won't be responsible for your financial situation or emotional well-being. Those boundaries are non-negotiable. He nodded slowly, accepting the limited offering. Thank you. It's more than I expected. As the reception wound down, I slipped away without dramatic goodbyes. Outside, my waiting limousine represented the life I had built. A life of independence, success, and self-sufficiency born from abandonment's harsh lesson. Before returning to the airport, I directed the driver to make one final stop. At the real estate office handling my childhood home sale. The agent recognized me immediately, having seen my professional profile in industry publications. Miss Patterson from Miller and Patterson Group. This is an unexpected honor. How can I assist you? I'm interested in the property at 1842 Maple Avenue, I stated, presenting my business card. But not as a conventional buyer. An hour later, I walked through my childhood home for the first time in 10 years, noting the needed repairs and potential renovations. I hadn't made an impulsive decision to purchase it from nostalgia or sentiment. Rather, I saw an opportunity to transform this symbol of abandonment into something productive. An investment property that would provide stable housing for others while generating returns for my portfolio. The following morning, as my flight prepared to depart, I made two significant calls. The first was to a local contractor authorizing renovations to begin on the Maple Avenue house. The second was to Diane, informing her of my decision to establish a scholarship fund for students from broken homes, aimed specifically at those seeking careers in real estate or business. The Mackenzie Patterson Fresh Start Scholarship, Diane repeated thoughtfully. It's perfect. 5 full scholarships annually, I confirmed. With mentoring components and guaranteed internships at our firm for recipients who maintain academic standards. Creating opportunity from abandonment, Diane observed. Full circle. My final stop before leaving town was perhaps the most symbolic. I asked the driver to take me to the bus stop where my parents had left me 10 years earlier. The bench was the same, though the sign had been updated. Standing there in my designer outfit, successful beyond what that terrified 18-year-old could have imagined, I felt a profound sense of completion. Diane had flown in to meet me, arriving in a rental car just as my limousine pulled up to the bus stop. She had insisted on being there for this moment, understanding its significance without explanation. Ready to go home? She asked, embracing me briefly. I am, I replied, realizing the word home now meant the life I had built, not the place I had come from. As we drove away, I reflected on the journey from abandoned teen to successful businesswoman. The path had not been linear or easy, and the scars remained. But I had learned that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can control how we respond and what we build from the ruins of broken expectations. The abandoned girl at the bus stop with $10 and a diploma had become a woman of substance and integrity, not despite her abandonment, but partly because of it. The painful lessons of self-reliance, resilience, and discernment had shaped my character in ways that comfort and security might never have managed. I didn't return to my hometown seeking revenge or even justice. I returned to close a chapter, to acknowledge my journey's beginning, so that I could more fully embrace its continuation. The circle was complete, but my story was far from over. What difficult experiences have shaped you into the person you are today? Have you ever had to return to face your past? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to share in more stories of overcoming life's greatest challenges. Remember, your past doesn't define your future. Your responses to it do. Thank you for joining me on this personal journey, and I hope it inspires you to transform your own struggles into strength.